The camera zooms in on an old black and white photo of Al Capone, the shadows growing darker. The sound of ominous footsteps echoes in the background as a low, sinister voice begins. Behind the glittering lights of Chicago in the 1920s, a man built an empire on fear, blood, and betrayal. His name, Al Capone. A man whose chilling influence still haunts the city to this very day. This is the story of America's most notorious gangster, and the darkness he unleashed. The screen cuts to a dramatic title, Al Capone, The Rise of a Crime Lord. In the early 20th century, Chicago was a city of excess, prosperity, and danger. But lurking beneath the surface was a criminal underworld unlike anything the country had ever seen. And at the center of it all stood one man, Alphonse Gabriel Capone, known simply as Al Capone. The screen shows vintage footage of Chicago, then fades to Capone's image. Born in Brooklyn, New York in 1899, Capone came from humble beginnings. But by the time he was in his 20s, he was already entangled in the world of organized crime. He joined the notorious 5 Points gang, where his violent tendencies quickly earned him respect and fear. Cut to a photo of young Capone, eyes menacing, surrounded by crime syndicates. By 1920, Prohibition had been enacted, making alcohol illegal in the United States. But Capone saw opportunity where others saw law. The black market for booze exploded, and Al Capone became the king of bootlegging in Chicago. His network ran an empire of speakeasies, brothels, gambling, and extortion, spanning the entire city and beyond. Show a map of Chicago with Capone's network expanding like a spider's web. Capone's rise to power wasn't just through business acumen, it was through brutal force. His reign of terror included thousands of murders, but none were as infamous as the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in 1929. The screen shows a black and white image of the massacre scene, bodies lying on the ground. On February 14, 1929, Capone's men dressed as police officers lined up 7 members of the rival Moran gang in a garage on North Clark Street. In cold blood, they were shot down, gunned down by Tommy guns, an image forever etched in the history of crime. Cut to a reenactment scene of the massacre, eerie music playing softly. Capone's grip on Chicago grew tighter, but so did the pressure from law enforcement. Despite his brutal control over the city, there was one thing Capone couldn't escape: the law. In the early 1930s, authorities were closing in, led by the relentless U.S. Treasury agent Elliot Ness and his group of incorruptible officers, the Untouchables. For years, Capone was able to elude conviction on numerous charges, thanks to bribed officials, witnesses too afraid to testify, and his vast wealth. But in the end, it was his taxes that would bring him down. In 1931, Capone was convicted of income tax evasion. His empire crumbled not from the violence he inflicted, but from the one thing he couldn't buy: a fair trial. He was sentenced to 11 years in federal prison, and while he spent the last years of his life struggling with the effects of syphilis, his name lived on in infamy. Al Capone died in 1947, but his legacy, his terror, and his empire remain one of the darkest chapters in American crime history. Capone's story serves as a chilling reminder of the consequences of power, greed, and violence. A man who once ruled with an iron fist, only to fall victim to the very system he sought to corrupt. If you found this story chilling, leave a like, share it with others who crave the darker side of history, and subscribe for more true crime tales that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Al Capone's reign may have ended, but his legacy of fear, betrayal, and bloodshed still lingers in the alleys and shadows of Chicago. Capone may be gone, but the darkness he created never truly leaves.